The coronavirus and the spread of the contagious Delta variant continues to prevent the U.S. economy from returning back to normal. Now, throughout the pandemic, essential workers have helped keep the country safe, fed, and moving forward. But despite the development of COVID vaccines, many people are hesitant to return to the workforce. And although extensive unemployment benefits have ended, a Washington Post article suggests America's unemployed are not going back to work until they feel safe and well compensated. The writer of that piece, Heather Long, joins us now. She's an economics correspondent for The Post. Heather, this is a fascinating story. So let's just break down a couple of things at the top. As unemployment benefits ended for millions of Americans last month, some economists and Republican lawmakers predicted a surge in job hirings. But that's not happened as of yet. What's going on there?
You're right. The early evidence certainly suggests that unemployment benefits were not the main reason holding people back from going and seeking work again. And September is certainly a little bit early. 7 million people did lose benefits over Labor Day weekend. This September jobs report that was very weak was only about a week later than that. So that's not a lot of time. But the real evidence we have so far is from the summer. There were over 20 states, Republican-led states, that rolled back the benefits early. And those states have not seen any faster hiring or any more hiring than states that kept the unemployment benefits in place all the way through the summer. So certainly the early evidence does not point to that Republican argument at all. And I keep telling people, look, there's a bigger picture here. Obviously, as your last segment just showed, a lot of people are still very concerned about the coronavirus. And even more so, people are looking to change what they want to do for their career or their job right now in a way that we haven't seen in decades.
So let us talk about this bigger picture. In your report, you mentioned how low-wage workers are revolting against years of poor pay and stressful conditions. Probably not just low-wage workers. We've done stories on Striketober because of the number of workers walking off the job, the Great Resignation because the number of people sort of choosing not to return to work or resigning. And, you know, the university professor that coined that phrase, the Great Resignation, among the various factors that he listed for this, he said that people were reassessing their identity in regards to work. Do you co-sign on that? Are people kind of taking a second look at what work means to them?
Yeah, I definitely agree with that. I had actually written in the spring a piece called This is Not a Labor Shortage, It's a Great Reassessment of Work in America. So very much what we're seeing is I think this is really the biggest shakeup in the labor market since probably World War II. Obviously, the coronavirus crisis impacted just about everyone around the world. Certainly in the United States, there was about a year where people's lives were truly different, whether they were working from home or whether they were out of a job, whether they were having to deal with the homeschooling and the virtual schooling for kids. It really changed people. It gave them a chance to sit there and say, what do I really want to do with my life and with my career? And you're seeing that we have a record number of people who quit their jobs. Over 30 million people have quit their jobs so far this year. We've just never seen anything like that. But it's also, we're seeing a huge uptick in people starting their own businesses, trying to live their entrepreneurial dreams, and of course, early retirement. So we're just seeing it in so many different places in both high wage workers and lower wage workers who are saying, look, I really want something very different right now. And I really want a workplace that values my mental health and my family commitments. Higher wages is a good start, but they're looking for more flexibility at the end of the day.
You also report that an alarming number of women stopped working. Break that down for us. How many women have left the workforce and why?
Certainly. In September alone, we saw over 300,000 women drop out of the labor force. What that means is they either quit a job or they stopped looking for a job. And that is a huge sign. We saw the same thing last September, a reminder that the child care situation and the daycare situation has really not been fully sorted out yet. Yes, most schools did reopen at the end of August and early September. But what a lot of people tell me when I call and talk to these, particularly moms, is they say, look, the after-school programs did not reopen. There's still staffing shortages in a lot of schools, or there's bus driver shortages. People explaining to me that sometimes my kid gets home at 2 p.m. and sometimes the kid gets home almost at 4 p.m. And this sort of chaotic reopening was a real struggle for moms. Obviously, there's been a number of outbreaks at different schools, particularly for those younger children under 12 who are not vaccinated yet. And so this was a real warning sign that for trying to get these women back into jobs and into the workforce, we still have a long way to go in this crisis.
So I guess the other question is, I mean, can we trust these numbers to indicate that we're, like you said, that we have a long way to go? Often in ordinary times, we see some sort of uptick during the holiday season. Is there a possibility that what we're seeing in September may be a little too early to judge and we could see an uptick in the holiday season, or we are not living in ordinary times and so we can't, expect what we saw before in previous years?
Yeah, that's a great question. I think generally speaking, the hope is, and most economists believe, that there will be an uptick in hiring for the rest of the year. The question is, how strong is the rebound? Obviously, that Delta variant really took a big bite out of hiring and economic momentum in August and September. We've obviously seen that fade, that Delta variant recede a bit, which is a great sign for the country. And so hopefully hiring will pick back up. And as you mentioned, there's always seasonal patterns of hiring, tons of jobs open right now in warehouses and at retail stores. So I think you're right that we saw a really weak jobs report in September, 194,000 jobs added. We hope to see closer to 500,000 for October, November, December. But again, we still have close to 8 million unemployed people in this country. So even if we did pick up the pace a little bit, there will still, by the end of the year, be millions of people who had a job before the pandemic and are still struggling to get back in.
Heather, before I let you go, because so economists know and understand that many things are cyclical in nature, but because of this pandemic, things are obviously, you can't use past performance or past history to predict what will happen in the months going forward, because we've just never really been here. We've never seen anything really quite like this, at least not in the last 100 years or so. So what I find sort of remarkable is how people use what is happening in the economy to make political statements or judgments, whether it has something to do with the administration, what's happening in the White House, or COVID policy. But it strikes me that your reporting and others that I've seen suggest that there's something else going on. And Anne-Marie touched on it at the start of our discussion, which may be that part of why we are where we are today is because the pandemic has changed people's perceptions of what's important in life. And perhaps what's important, even if it means you're not going back to work because you want a better salary. We're seeing that play out, for example, with the IATSE union negotiations that are ongoing. The IATSE group, which is the organization, the union that represents all the behind-the-scenes folks who work on Hollywood and film and television productions. And it's sort of interesting there that they were preparing to strike. It would have been the first strike in the 128-year history of that union, nationwide strike, I should say. And yet part of it is because production and television companies have ramped up because they were off for 18 months, right? They couldn't produce any content. People are demanding content. So producers and movie studios are ramping up production and they're trying to get that content out as fast as they can, which means that everybody's working really, really hard and they're pushing everybody to work really hard. There's also streaming that has become more and more prominent. And so my point is that, the union sort of, I think at this point feels that they have some leverage. The studios need to produce more content. These are the people that make it happen. You have to treat them fairly and equitably. And perhaps that's what's happening with the workforce in general. Even if you're not in a union, you want to be treated fairly and equitably because we've just lived through this horrific pandemic.
That's exactly right. Obviously, we have over 10 million job openings in this country right now and about 8 million unemployed. And so, yes, this is a lot of power in the hands of workers, whether you're in a union or you're not. And this isn't a Republican or a Democrat issue. workers across the country, both high-income workers and workers in those $10, $11, $12 an hour jobs, recognize that they are really needed right now. And so that gives them a lot of power, and they can demand more. They can demand higher pay right now. We've seen for the first time ever in this country, the average pay for restaurant workers and grocery store workers is now over $15 an hour. That happened over the summer as a result of the dynamics that are playing out. But you're right. What I keep stressing, and I think you're stressing it too, is it's more than just pay. Pay is a good start, but a lot of people are saying, I'm burned out. I'm burned out from this surviving this pandemic or watching friends and family pass away, and that deep trauma that I've been through. And just what you're saying, because of these staffing shortages, it means the existing workers are often having to work harder and work extra shifts. And so that's why we saw a huge number of resignations, not just in retail and restaurants, but also in healthcare has shot up. Huge number of healthcare workers dropping out now. And another one that really stunned me is manufacturing. For years, we've all talked about how great these manufacturing jobs are. We have seen record numbers of manufacturing workers also quitting. Similar stories where they feel burned out. There are not enough people in the factory doing the work, and they can't carry the load all by themselves.
Yeah, you talk about manufacturing. With healthcare, you can understand why people would be burned out. But, I was sort of reading about a whole conversation about people applying for other jobs, and I thought about manufacturing where, it's sold as you can make this income, but often it also is factoring in the overtime hours that you're going to work. And maybe you're going to come in on the weekend every once in a while. And I wonder if there's some just general pushback when it comes to that stuff, that's not the job that you sold to me. The job was going to be, we make X amount of money per hour, not when you factor in overtime or when you factor in holiday pay or whatever these sort of extra things. I think workers are kind of like, all right, we need to be a little more honest about what we're getting paid for the job that we're doing.
Yeah, that's exactly right. And honestly, that's happening across a number of sectors. These advertisements online, when you go to search for a job, that will say, oh, it's $18 or $20 an hour, but then there's an asterisk. And that says, okay, you only get that money, as you said, if you work weekends or the overnight shift, or if you bring 5 years of experience. A young woman was explaining to me who's a plumber, was saying, look, I thought this was going to be a great job. They were advertising $15 an hour or more. And then the person said to me, you're hired, but I'm only going to pay you 10. And she said, look, come on, this is not right. This is not what you advertise. So I think there is some of that going on. I hate to call it quite false advertising, but it's a bit of a bait and switch situation that's happening across a number of sectors right now.
Yeah, maybe something that you could have gotten away with before, but like I said, we're not living in ordinary times. Not right now anyways. Heather Long, great talking to you. Thank you.
Thank you.